are in the middle of our astronomy lesson. I know you guys have learned a lot about the galaxy, the solar systems, other galaxies out there, planets. It's all so much, and it's so exciting. Today we are going to jump into stars and constellations for our lesson. So we are on lesson 6 of our solar system and beyond, stars and constellations. Yahoo! Sorry. Anyway, so here's some vocabulary words for you to look at real quick. Constellations, group of stars in the sky that look like people, objects or animals. They really don't look like them, but they kind of refer to stories that people used to tell. We'll get to that in a minute. Ladle, a spoon or dipper with a long handle. You may see that with your soup. Magnetic, navigate, orient, orienting, movements, and Polaris, the North Star. Awesome. So let's get started. Oh, look, I'm in space. Okay. It's time for us to head back to our home planet, Earth. From our home, we can see glimpses of space by looking up into the sky. After our journey, perhaps you won't see the stars as just little twinkling lights in the sky anymore. Now you know they are more like the sun, the star that is the center of our solar system. You know that up close, stars are really massive powerhouses of super hot gas. So if mass is the amount of matter in an object, what does it mean for a star to be massive? Think about that. The next time you stand looking up into the night sky, perhaps you will study the stars in a new way. They all look about the same size from where you stand on Earth, but you know they're not. They are different sizes. Some are brighter than others, and some are hotter than others. Maybe you once thought the stars in the sky were pretty close together. But after taking a ride in our special classroom spaceship, you remember that even though the stars look close together in the sky, they are really very, very, very far apart. It's true, as stars cluster together to form galaxies. Even when they are clustered together, most stars are still incredibly far apart from other stars in the same galaxy. And they are even farther apart from the stars of other galaxies. There is a lot of space in space. Look up at the night sky and try to count the stars. There are a lot of them. On a clear evening, depending upon where you are, you can see as many as 2,000 or so stars that can be seen from Earth with the naked eye. All the stars you see are in our own Milky Way galaxy. You can't see stars from other galaxies without the use of a telescope. But looking between the stars of our galaxy, you may be able to see the distant Andromeda galaxy if it is a very dark night, and you know right where to look. Who can tell me something about the Andromeda galaxy you learned earlier? The Andromeda galaxy is the closest spiral galaxy to the Milky Way. It is spiral, just like this one. It's probably it right there. It's very far away, not much is known about it. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, people have been looking up at the night sky just like you. Humans have tried to understand the location of the stars to predict their positions each night in the sky. The grand scheme of the universe, it is human nature for us to try to understand why things are the way they are and where we fit in. Stars are pretty fascinating, though. I mean, you can, like I've told you before, you can really locate where you are based on where the stars are. But they can also make mathematical measurements using math to tell where the planets are going to be when. That's why when a calendar comes out for 2021, they can already put in there when the full moons are going to be, when the half moons are going to be, when there's not going to be a moon visible. Because they already know using math where the moon is going to be. Every day for the rest of time, they can, well, unless it suddenly starts slowing down for some reason, or light or whatever. But the point is, they know where the planets are going to be when, based on how fast they're moving, observing using science. Anyway, since ancient times, people have grouped the stars into patterns called constellations. Ancient civilizations saw these constellations as figures of people, animals, and objects. Basically, they use the constellations to tell stories. So they may not necessarily look like them. They played connect the dots with the stars by drawing imaginary lines between them to form pictures in the sky. Some of them don't look very much like they should look, you think. Let's go ahead and get rid of my little photo here. All right. So these pictures often told familiar mythological stories about heroes like the Greek hunter Orion, who stands ready with his shield to fight a bull. They're also about mythological animals like Pegasus, a beautiful winged creature horse. And there were about animals such as the Canis Major, Canis Minor. Canis means dog in Latin and major meaning greater. If Canis Major is commonly known as the great dog, it is easy to see who might be behind him, following behind. Here are some examples of some of the night sky. Pretty cool. In the stories about Orion, the great hunter, these two constellations are Orion's faithful hunting dogs, forever following at the heels of their master as they move through the night sky. The very brightest star in our sky, Sirius, is in the constellation Canis Major and often called the dog star. Sirius is a very large star compared to our sun and one of the closest stars to our solar system, only a little over 8.5 light years away. Here's a reddish Betelgeuse, or I'm not sure how to say it, but that's okay. It forms Orion's right shoulder and the bluish right regil, which forms the left foot down there. The bluish star is Orion's left shoulder, is the Bellatrix, a very hot young star. People who live in the Earth's northern hemisphere see a different set of constellations than people in the Earth's southern hemisphere. Those constellations above Earth's North Pole can only be seen by people in the northern hemisphere. Those above the Earth's South Pole can only be seen by people in the southern hemisphere. However, the constellations above the Earth's equator can be seen from both hemispheres. Maybe someday you'll cross the equator, travel to another part of the world, and experience the constellations of the night sky from another point of view. Since ancient times, people have noticed the stars in the sky and familiar constellations move in a predictable and interesting way. All of the stars in the sky move in a circular pattern around one point. In the northern hemisphere, the half of the planet Earth north of the equator, there is a star located very near the point in the sky that we call the North Star, or Polaris. Even though all the rest of the stars in the sky change their positions throughout the night, the North Star is always located almost directly north. Ooh, love this photo. This time-lapse photograph is taken over a period of time during a dark night. You can kind of point to the part of the sky around with all the other circle stars. It gets a little bit trippy just staring at this photo for too long, but it's pretty neat. It's a time-lapse photo, so obviously not all at once. Knowing this, as far as where the stars are at any given time, helped the sailors and travelers in the northern hemisphere for thousands of years to orient themselves. When you're out at sea, there's not much else to see but the stars. Long before modern navigational tools like the compass and GPS were invented, sailors relied on the star Polaris. Technology has advanced a great deal those days. So much so that people like to participate in a modern sporting competition known as orienting, where they use magnetic compasses and GPS to orient themselves and accomplish a task or goal. You might remember from earlier lessons that the Earth has a North Pole and a South Pole. These poles act like a magnet. A magnetic compass works because of the Earth's magnetic field. A GPS is a modern device that uses man-made satellites orbiting the Earth to find and tell your position on Earth. Two patterns of stars you may already be familiar with that are visible in the Northern Hemisphere are the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. Each one looks like a ladle in the sky. The Big Dipper and the Little Dipper are not the official names of the constellations themselves, but are part of the two very famous larger constellations. The Big Dipper is a group of stars that is a part of the constellation Ursa Major, which means Greater Bear in Latin. The Little Dipper is a smaller group of stars that part of the constellation Ursa Minor. Ursa Minor is smaller bear. So smaller bear, little bear, big bear, yeah. Suppose it is a dark and starry night and you are trying to find your way through the countryside. You can look up into the night sky and find the Little Dipper. The last star on its handle is the brightest star in the constellation. You just heard about this star named Polaris. It is called Polaris because it is almost directly above the Earth's North Pole. Once you find Polaris, you can find the North simply by facing the star. When you are facing north, your back is to the south. Your right side is to the east. Your left side is to the west. Now, all that you have to do is decide which direction to go. Speaking of brightness of stars, by the way, if you go into studying the stars and want to go a little deeper into what we're not going to do here, you can actually look and see what the names of the stars were, and then put them in order by their brightness. And supposedly it tells a story. It's how the ancients used to read the stars. Greeks, Romans, Hebrews, they all had different stories behind the different constellations. And that's all something you can look into if you enjoy that sort of thing. Sometimes the Big Dipper is easier to see than the Little Dipper. You can also use the Big Dipper to find the North Star. Just line up the two stars opposite the handle of the Big Dipper's bowl and draw a line through them. The line points up out of the bowl of the Big Dipper right to the North Star on the tip of the Little Dipper's handle. And you've got the North Star Polaris to point you in the right direction. Who needs a GPS? Hear somebody saying, I do. People have been using stars to navigate or find their way for thousands of years. People who live in the northern hemisphere today can still see these stars and other constellations when they look up at the sky at night. The runaway slaves before the time of the Civil War saw the ladle in the sky and sang a song telling them to follow the drinking gourd north to freedom because they were safe in the north, opposed to the south. That's all Civil War stuff. Follow the drinking gourd. It's actually a song on YouTube. I think we actually listened to it in class once. Maybe not this year, but anyway, check it out sometime. Throughout history, people in different cultures have looked up at the Big Dipper and have seen other pictures besides the famous Water Dipper. In one Greek myth or story about Ursa Major, the jealous goddess Hera, the wife of Zeus, turns a maiden named Callisto into a bear. Then, to protect Callisto the bear, Zeus placed her in the sky as a constellation. An Arabian myth describes a coffin that is followed by three mourners. One Native American group saw a bear being followed by three hunters, one of them carrying the pan in which to cook the bear meat. The Norse people of the northern Europe saw Odin's wagon. So again, these constellations have been over and over and over again with different cultures, different ancient groups, told different stories. What do you see if you live in the southern hemisphere? People who live south of the equator in places like Chile, South Africa, and Australia see a different set of constellations than people in the northern hemisphere in places like the United States, Canada, Norway, Turkey, and China. On the other side of the world, as they rotate around the South Pole, people look out into the stars of the Milky Way, galaxies from the Milky Way galaxy from a different direction than people north of the equator do. So they see these stars right here. So cool. You might be surprised to learn there is no star directly over the South Pole. There is no South Star around which the rest of the stars circle. But there is a small constellation named Octans, very close by which circles around the spot where the South Star would be, if it was there. Octans resemble an octant, an early instrument used for navigation. Not too far away is another constellation familiar to stargazers in the southern hemisphere, the Southern Cross. Why do you think ancient people may have pictured an octant in this part of the sky? Both the constellation and tool were used to help travelers navigate. Good. How many of these constellations have you seen in the night sky? The constellations you've heard about today are just a few of the 88 constellations astronomers have identified in their skies. Next time you have a chance to enjoy a dark, starlit night, gaze up into the sky. See if you can find some familiar constellations. If not, have some fun and make up some constellations and stories of your own. Maybe someday you'll cross the equator, travel to another part of the world, and experience the constellations or the night sky from another point of view. So what is a constellation? A group of stars in the night sky. What are some constellation star patterns you heard about? Okay, we've got the Canis Major, Minor, Orion, kind of holding his bow, his shield, his belt. It's pretty neat. A couple answers there. A couple more questions. Excuse me. Why is it called the North Star? Because it's in the north. Okay, just skip through here real quick. There is going to be some discussion questions in Canvas for you to answer, an assignment as well for you to do on constellations. That. All right, questions. Okay, so here we're going to ask you about the. Excuse me, goodness. Okay, so here. Constellations. Okay, so poetry. Okay, so people have often been inspired by stars and constellations of the night sky to write poetry. You're going to hear a poem titled Escape at Bedtime, written by Robert Louis Stevenson in the 1800s. This poem is about a child looking out the window at bedtime and marveling at the stars in the night sky. So listen for comparisons in the poem and tell about the poem. The lights from the parlor and the kitchen shone out through the blinds and the windows and bars. The high overhead and all moving about, there are thousands and millions of stars. There never was thousands of leaves on a tree, nor people in church or a park, as the crowds of the stars looked down upon me and glittered and winked in the dark. The dog and the plow and the hunter and all, and the star and the sailor of Mars, they shone in the sky and pale by the wall would be half full of water and stars. They saw me at last, they chased me with cries, and they soon had me packed into bed. But the glory kept shining bright in my eyes, and the stars going round in my head. So think about the poem and how it works, and there'll be an assignment in there for you to compare. Okay. Get back to that, and you'll have your next lesson tomorrow. Have a good day.